Hey guys, what's up? It's been a while since I made some updates on my deck and talk about some of the locals I've been to. And yeah, so I'm gonna do hopefully a small, quick deck update and some of my results from a couple of past locals I've been to. And yeah, so I'll probably end up speaking about the one I went to today. And then I'll talk about the last 2 weeks, a week or so that I've also went to. Um, some locals. Sorry, I took a sip of water there. And yeah, talk about some changes I made, some cards I'm trying out, some ratios and strategies and stuff I've encountered while playing, and stuff like that. Yeah, and hopefully we'll learn something together. So yeah, let's talk about the deck real quickly. Just a couple small changes, nothing too major, but um, I felt that it helped the deck a little bit, and was some of the changes were worth maybe talking about. I'm not too sure, but we'll see. So in terms of the, I'll just go by I guess CMC costs, and that makes the most sense here. So in terms of CMC cost of one, we got two marches, four prismatic, and four opt. So not much has changed there. I've liked this ratio for a long time, especially like ops, mainly because it helps me fetch get lands. It's very important to get lands in this deck, but at the same time, it's also important to not also flood out, because when you flood out, it kind of sucks. But when you also miss your land drops, it also sucks. And so I think I definitely like the ops. Helps with the consistency of the deck, and it works well with Snapcaster. You if you don't like the ops, you can play maybe consider, or you can play thought seizes. I'd say op is better just because I want to get those lands as a control deck. There's a lot of times playing when you're behind on lands, it just kind of your deck becomes unplayable. So yeah, so ops were good. I still like prismatic ending, namely because I want to be able to hit planeswalkers, which this deck has the most issues dealing with is planeswalkers. And so this will allow you to hit anything up to 4 CMC, so like Jaces, Teferis, Ren and 6, Grist, stuff like that. So those are like the main planeswalkers you're looking to hit. Anything above 5 CMC, it kind of sucks. You just like if they play a Teferi, there's really not any way of getting rid of a 5-mana Teferi. It gets kind of difficult. At that point, you just have to run it over or something like that. Um, two marches have been pretty good here. Um, Let me use them as token killers. They're fantastic token killers. They also kill some other small weenie stuff. Sometimes this card is a little hard to cast, and because the cost on it, you have to lose mana in order to kill something. So you're negging your temple, for sure. But the fact that it can just basically hit anything, which is nice. It also can hit lands where prismatic ending cannot hit lands. So that's the utility of the marches. Hits sagas, hits tokens really well. Small creatures, stuff like that. Unfortunately, it doesn't hit planeswalker. Otherwise, I think I would play more if it could hit planeswalkers. But yeah, that's it for the 1 mana spells, I guess. 2 mana spells, still playing two dams. I've liked this ratio of board wipes. I Since we're playing a lot of 1-for-1 stuff, most of the time your opponent's boards won't get out of control, so you don't really need that many. And it being a single spot removal is also very nice, and sometimes it works well with Teferi. If you have small baby Teferi on the board, uptick it, you can just kind of blast whatever you need to. It's kind of nice there. And the regeneration, as I spoke before, sometimes plays relevance, especially if people are siding in that 4 mana green guy with regenerate and stuff. That's I forgot what his name was, but either way, he's not too difficult for you to deal with, and it deals with all the artifact regeneration and stuff like that. So I like Dam, and it's not as color intensive as Supreme Verdict, but Supreme Verdict is pretty good. Second choice if you're not playing Dam. For a counterspell, pretty staple here. And the one card I did cut down on is I cut down to 3 Snapcaster. Mainly because I couldn't figure out what else to cut out, and I wanted to play a second Emperor, and so I just cut down Snap. So sometimes Snap is really really great late game, But early in the game, like Snap, if you don't have Opt in your graveyard or something like that, Snap kind of becomes kind of clunky. Um, you need ops in the graveyard. You need like prismatic endings and stuff like that. Unfortunately, prismatic ending is sorcery speed, so snapping on your opponent's turn, you can't really cast the ending unless you have Teferi on the board. Your only other choice is March, but the problem with March and Snapcaster is it's very expensive to do both of them at the same time, unless you're pitching white cards from your hand, which you don't really want to. Kind of defeats the whole purpose of Snap. But I guess it kind of balances out, I guess, a little bit. Um, Namely, you want to snap with counterspell is what you want to do. Just try to snap counterspells, but that's a turn 4 play, and so yeah, I found that maybe 4 snap wasn't as great. I mean, it's still good. I mean, it's not bad, but I think I'd rather diversify my lineup a little bit and play a little bit more Planeswalker. We're loaded up on Planeswalker in this deck for sure. In terms of the 3 mana spells I've liked, I like these. I like the fairies. I like the Archmage's Charms. I like the Kaya's Guile. The fairies you can cut to 3 if you like. Sometimes he's not that great. There's the 3 mana slot for this deck is extraordinarily congested or contested, I guess. So you have so many choices of like 3 mana spells to play that you know your turn 3 is probably going to be your best turn. You have Snapcasters if you have Opt. You have obviously Teferi, Kai's Guile, Archmage Charm, and then you have Obscura Charm. You have Esper Charm, and yeah, like it's just there's so much stuff in the 3 mana slot that it's very difficult to kind of pick. I guess you also have Vindicate, you have Anguish Unmaking, you have Void Rend if you like. So there's just so much 3 mana stuff that you want to play, but obviously you don't want to put too many 3 mana spells in the deck in the sense that they're gonna kind of contest with each other. Like, do you decide to cast a fairy or do you decide to cast Archmage Charm, stuff like that. So I try to limit my 3 mana spells to just spells I know I always like to see during my matchups. Like for sure, Archmage Charm is always one of those cards I always love to see. Kai's Guile's been great removal, great like ways to kind of gain some advantage. And if you're playing against a graveyard deck, you put more in. But other than that, Esper Charm is probably a better choice. You could go with Escura's Charm and try to bring back Teferi, but that's kind of like a niche play. Like I'm already playing 4 copies of Teferi. I don't feel like I need to revive Teferi on my opponent's turn. Granted, it is kind of cool that you can do that, but 3 mana to do that seems kind of fringe. And so if you're gonna play Obscura Charm, you probably want more targets other than just Teferi. So yeah, so that's it for here. Yeah, 4 mana lineup. I just have 2 Emperors and Jace. Jace is great against other control matchups. Like you can just resolve him, and if they don't deal anything with it, your Brainstorm will win you the game. Emperor is just great against overall great against creatures. She's good for putting threats onto the board, because what this deck lacks is threats in terms of like creature presence. So Snapcaster was obviously my go-to creature to be like a threat presence on the board. But he's not always good if you don't have a graveyard, or if you decided to play Rest in Peace, or someone removes your graveyard with Endurance, he becomes that much more worse. And so I decided to add in the Emperors to kind of help put tokens on the board, kind of buff some stuff, basically, and act as removal too. So she kind of just does a couple of things for the deck, which is nice. So you can play 1 or 2 copies. I wouldn't play more than that. If you're playing like just blue white or maybe 80 card Yorion, then yeah, you might want to play more of her. But with my deck right now, I think just 2 copies is good. So we're playing a total of 9 Planeswalkers in the deck, so it's quite a lot. But yeah, I love my Planeswalker. And yeah, in terms of the 5 mana spells, we just got the 2 Solitudes, 2 Teferi. I like this ratio. Sometimes you draw too many of these guys in your opening hand, it sucks. Or you draw too many Solitudes and you don't have enough white cards to pitch for him, it kind of sucks. So I found that this ratio has been worked pretty well for me. You could play maybe a 3rd Solitude. I don't know about a 4th Solitude. I spoke about this in my previous videos, but I would only play 4 Solitudes if you're only doing blue-white, but if you're playing a third color, or maybe even a fourth color, then I think 2 Solitudes is good enough. Yeah, and worst comes to worst, you can try to recycle him with Teferi by popping him back into your hand. But oftentimes you play enough creature removal that namely he's here to kind of gain you life to help you survive till the you know later stage of the game. Yep. In terms of a mana base, not much has changed. I did acquire the Esper Trinome, but I haven't added to this deck because I don't want to play more tap lands. Like these three are good enough to play as tap lands, and I don't want to play any more than that. Granted, the only off land I have here is the Drowned Catacomb. So if you wanted to, you could try to put take this Drowned Catacomb out and put the Esper Triland in, and that might work. But I just don't like seeing with my hand opening. I don't like seeing like 2 of these in my hand because that feels really bad. And by putting another tap land in, that feels even worse. So I decided to just play 3 potential tap lands, and then the rest of my lands will be kind of like comes in and untapped essentially. So yeah, now that's my thought process on the lands at least. So it's all personal preference, and I play a lot of modern lately, and so in my experience, playing too many tap lands will screw you a lot. Like you'll get the colors you need, but by the time you get the colors you need, you're not gonna be able to cast anything that you want during that turn. And having mana up for a control deck is always important. So you always want to have mana up, and drawing these and keeping like greedy hands. Because with this particular deck, I like keeping greedy hands, and so the greedier hands I keep, I'm gonna try to minimize the chances of me keeping greedy hands with double tap lands or something like that. So having said that, that's just my play preference. I mean, what you could even do is bump this up to 25 lands. If you bump this up to 25 lands, I guess you could play the Trinome, the Esper Trinome, and be fine. So if you bump it up to 25 lands and you play less opt or something like that, then yes, you could totally do that. But at least for my deck, I want to keep it that ratio. And so the side deck, I'll talk a little bit about it. It keeps changing around a lot, and so depending on the meta, depending on the decks I play. But right now, I think my side deck is in a good spot. I've liked what I've saw today, and it worked out pretty well for me. So let's go over it. So I have an additional march, a third march in the side. I was trying 4. 4 felt too much, so I think 3 is a good spot for the card. So I have an extra march in the side here. 2 Rest in Peace, kind of a staple here. 2 Vetoes, pretty good staple. And then the new Secret Lair Aether Gust. These are really nice. I really love the artwork for this Aether Gust. It just absolutely amazing. I like the coloring of it, the art. It just looks fantastic. So 3 Aether Gust. I absolutely love this card. It's one of those cards that makes my control deck a lot better against certain decks than other control decks. Because people underestimate this thing, and so like today I played against like several green decks and stuff like that, and this card just came in and did its job. It was really good. I tried Farewell, but Farewell, sometimes I was just lacking that 6 mana source, so I couldn't get Farewell off. But when I did get Farewell off, it was great. But most of the time, I'm not gonna go for that greed. So I'll play a third dam in my deck in case there's a deck that's going really wide. The third dam will help with that a little bit. You can play a Supreme Verdict if you wanted to. I just have another dam, so I decided to play dam instead. So yeah, 2 Kai's Guile. Now you can cut this down to 1 in the side deck and just play 3. But this is still one of my favorite cards. Playing Esper is one of my favorite Orzhov cards. So I just like playing the additional 2 in the side in case I go against grave decks, and it has definitely helped against graveyard centric decks. So I think I'm just gonna keep that 2 here. 2 Void Rents. I was going back and forth between this card and I was playing a second March or a fourth March, I guess. But I found that I still like planeswalker removal, especially in the mirror, or just any planeswalker. Honestly, like this deck just cannot deal with planeswalkers. Ironically, if they resolve, there's really no way for you to remove planeswalkers or just really big stuff. And so yeah, I think Void Ren is just a good way to get rid of it. Um, so why not? Plus it's just 3 mana, 3 solid mana that you're always gonna have these colors for. So, and plus it's uncounterable. Because if they have a Teferi and they can back it up with a counter spell, you're just gonna lose the game. You're never gonna be able to break their parity because they have Teferi, they have a counter spell. You're never gonna be able to really break that. And so this Void Ren is gonna help you beat over the three Teferi or 5 Teferi, and hopefully be able to get you back in the game. And that has come up a few times where I just avoid Ren rather than play a prismatic ending or something like that, and it actually has kind of helped there. Yeah, so I'm playing just 2 Void Rens. Um, you don't really care for lands too much. Like if you're gonna hit lands, you're gonna go for March instead of Void Ren or Vindicate. Vindicate's kind of slow, so I'd rather keep my mana open. And so this is for 1 mana. I can hit like an Urza Saga or something like that. So, um, and Cavern of Souls, I don't care for. Like that's the other target that Vindicate would hit is Cavern of Souls. But my deck has done pretty well against Cavern decks or any decks that ran Caverns like Elves and Titan and Merfolk and stuff like that. Granted, there's not too many Merfolk players, but yeah, my deck's done okay against Cavern decks, so I don't feel like I need to play Vindicate just to kill Cavern of Souls. Void Ren is good enough, and if they do resolve it, if they do resolve a Titan or something, you can still kill the Titan with the Cavern of, with the Void Ren. So it's not the worst thing ever. So or you can kill Titan for 7 mana. I've done that before. I've just spent 7 mana just to snipe a Titan, and that has won me games. So not too bad. And March is a great token killer, and Void's a great planeswalker killer. So yeah. And the 2 final cards is Subtlety. This card's definitely great. Comes in, a lot of people don't expect it, but turn 4 Subtlety is really good. So you often either turn 4 Subtlety or you turn 4 Emperor. I like playing Emperor proactively, so like during their turn, if they don't cast anything, I like to flash in an Emperor, and then just down ticker, make a dude, make a 2/2 token, make a samurai, and then just kind of swing in that face and start applying pressure. But yeah, Subtlety I think is definitely a great card to have in the side. I play 2, but you can play more if you want. But I think 2 is good enough without kind of clogging up the rest of your space. So yeah, so let's talk about some games I went through this week and last week. So last week, I played with my friends. We went to I think it was like a 11 person tournament. And I think game 1 I played against. Damn, I can't quite remember all my games, but game 1 I think I played against. Let me think real quick. Trying to remember what I played against. I think Murktide. Yeah, I played against a Murktide deck. So I beat Murktide. Game 2 I played against Yawgmoth. I lose to Yawgmoth because I was just stuck on 3 lands the entire game for both game 2 and 3. Third game I played against a Burn deck. Sorry. So game 1 I can say I play against Burn. Game 2 I play against Yawgmoth. Game 3 I play against my friend. He's playing Blue-White Control. We ended up kind of tying or whatever, but it gave me the win because I had a better record, so I was most likely gonna place top 3. And then game 4, I think I played against another friend who had a worse record than I did, so they gave me the win. I forgot what he was playing. I think he was playing Grixis Death Shadow or something like that. Or no, he was playing game 4. I was playing against I think mono red combo deck. I was playing if I remember correctly, they were playing the Vivian, the 6 mana Vivian plus Fel War Beast or whatever his name, Fel Jar Beast, the thing that blinks. So he's playing a combo deck that basically impulse red mana into Vivian to sack the Fel Beast to kind of make a bunch of like Fell Beast and blink him and blink the Vivian and go infinite from there. And so I was able to beat him, namely because I think I have Aether Gusts and stuff like that. Like the cool thing I did, I guess, was turn game two. I beat him game one. Game two, he goes Magnus of the Moon. So I have a blue source, and so I think he goes Magnus, and then he goes another Magnus, turn three. But I think turn two, I was able to Aether Gust one of them. Turn three, he attacks with one of the Magnus, and I flash in the Snapcaster, block the Magnus of the Moon, and gave flashback to like an Aether Gust to counter his spells and stuff. That was just like some plays that I thought were a little tricky that I was able to outplay and win. So I ended up getting second place for that particular tournament. It was a 12-man tournament, 12 or 14-man tournament. So I got second or third place for that one. And then this week, or today, I guess, I went to another tournament today. Was another 12-maner tournament, and I placed second. Well, I guess I'll speak about it. But yeah, so game one, played against a Exurius control 80 card Yorion deck. And I played my deck. So game one, he wins it because he resolves a Jace that I couldn't remove. Game two, I resolve a Jace that he couldn't remove. It was kind of ironic because we were just doing that back and forth and just brainstorming with Jace. And game two, I won. Game three, we just went into time and we ended up drawing there. In terms of like advantage, I would say maybe he had advantage. I had more creatures on the board, and I was just kind of swinging into his face. So I think in terms of like advantage and stuff, I think he might have card advantage, but I had board presence, I guess. So I was just kind of attacking in with like a Solitude and Snapcaster and a Celestial Colonnade. So, but we ended up going to time and end up just drawing. So that was game one. Oh, sorry, game one, match one. What I sided in is I think I sided in Veto's this and I think Salty. That was my side against his deck. And I forgot what I took out, but yeah, sided this in. Veto was great. Void Rain was actually pretty decent. I was able to kill some of his creatures, killed his Teferi. And Subtlety was great too. Subtlety was definitely great against that. Bounced Teferi, got a body on board, bounced his creature, got a body on board. So yeah, so these cards were definitely great against that matchup. So that was game one. Game two, I played against I played against Rhinos. Cascade Rhinos. Game one, he had me on the ropes. I was literally at 2 life the entire time. He had me on the ropes, but he started to run out of steam. I think he was able to resolve like 2 Rhinos and just kept smacking me with the Rhinos. I kept trying to blink in Snapcaster to steal the Rhinos. I still stole 2 Rhinos, board wiped once, but I was at like 2 life. He had Brazen Bar, like he flashed in Brazen Borrower. He had Stomping Giant, stuff like that, and so he was really close to killing me. But I was able to stabilize with Solitude. So I had Solitude on the board. I hit his face, went up to 5, and now so I'm out of range for the Brazen Borrower, or sorry, not Brazen Borrower, the Stomping Giant, the Skull Crusher Giant. And so I had a Teferi on. I placed a Teferi. I bounced back his Giant on the board, and then he tries to bolt me with the Giant and had a Dovin's Veto, or not, I didn't have Dovin's Veto. Sorry, I had a counter spell, so I just countered it. And now basically I had the 3 mana Teferi, I had big Teferi, and that was essentially game. So with Teferi on the board, he was not going to resolve any more Rhinos. Big Teferi was netting me card advantage, and Solitude. I had Solitude in hand and Solitude on the board, so I was pretty safe from getting bolted and just straight up dying and stuff like that. So, game one was really close. He almost had me, but I think I played pretty well and was able to kind of stabilize at 2 life and just win the game from there. So game 3, what I sided in was, let me think here. I think I did this. yeah, I think I did this sort of board. So thought process here for inciting against rhinos is vetoes great for countering the rhinos um, when they do cascade off. Like the thing about rhinos is when they play Charlotte's agent or they play the violent outburst, you just want to counter whatever is gonna go on the counter the rhino. You don't want to counter the actual spell because it doesn't do anything. So yeah, I use this to counter the spells. I also use these to counter Brazen Borrower if they're gonna play the thief part, or I counter the stomping giant if they're playing the stomping to stop the stomping part of the stomping giant. So yeah, so vetoes were great. Plus it helps play around force of negation because they definitely try to um, outburst you during your turn and or during your end phase, you just veto the outburst or not the outburst, the rhino, and they can't force negate this. So that was nice. And then this as a board wipe if it ever came up. This is token killer for sure. They're making tokens. Sometimes you just need to kill one token. They're like, yeah, it's a negative, it's a minus trying to kill a token with this thing, but sometimes it's important to do so. And so that was in there. And then MVP of the matchup was Aether Gust. Like for sure, this card was insane against them. Um, like the cards that you need to watch out for is Force of Negation and Mystical Dispute for sure. But yeah, I think one game he goes Violent Outburst during my end of my turn. I just Aether Gust it, so he had to either put it on the top of his deck or bottom, and he decided to put it onto the bottom just because he knew perhaps I could I still had mana open, so if he did draw it again, he wasn't gonna be able to cast it. So yeah, like I was able to Aether Gust several of his red cards too. I think he tried to Magnus the Moon me. I Aether Gust it back. He tried stopping giant me. I Aether Gust it. And I had Snapcaster, so I was flashing this thing back and forth. And yeah, he just wasn't able to really resolve much during game two, and I just won because I had a bunch of I had a Celestial Colonnade and a Snapcaster that was just kind of poking at him and having my mana open up. I was never really able to resolve Teferi game two because I think every time I tried to resolve it, he had either Force of Negation, or he had Mystical Dispute. So I was never really able to resolve Teferi game two. But Snapcaster plus Aether Gust came in real good. You could try to do subtlety, but the risk of subtlety is that it only hits a few things. It hits Charlotte's Agent and maybe a Bone Crusher or a Brazen Borrower, but they rarely will cast those without casting the first part of the spell. So I don't really like subtlety too much against them. So that's why I didn't side in the subtlety. Other than that, the only other card you gotta watch out for is Blood Moon. Yeah, he definitely had Blood Moon, but he was never able to resolve it. And by the time he could have resolved it, I had all my basics up. I had like two island, I had a swamp, and I had my plains up. So it didn't matter. He didn't really want to play it. I think the time he did play the Magnus of the Moon, he was already at the end of his rope. So I just Aether Gusted just because I could. So it didn't matter too much. So yeah, at that point, I was kind of just way ahead in terms of resources and in terms of just having threats on the board. So yeah, 2-0 the Rhino deck. Game three, I played against Dimir Reanimator. It was kind of rough on his end because I think my deck is just better matched against his deck just because I have so many exiling cards and graveyard hate. Game one, I think he tried to do some stuff with like persist. I had counter spells. He had like reassembling skeleton, blood gas, and stuff like that on the board. And I had prismatic endings. I had whirly march, and game one was kind of rough because I was just drawing a bunch with Snapcaster plus Archmage Charm. I had a bunch of counterspell, so he couldn't really combo off game one. Game two, I sided in. I think I did Doman's Veto because I wasn't sure. 'Cause I did see a couple counter spells, so I did vetoes. I think I did this, and maybe Void Rends. um, as my side-ins. And rest in peace, I was able to see turn 2, so he couldn't remove the rest in peace. And at the end of the game, he told me he was debating on putting in feed the swarm, but he didn't. And I think rest in peace kind of just did work there. And then the rest of this package here, my usual board graveyard hate package, wherever my fourth Kaya's Guile in. Kaya's Guile was great too. I was able to kind of kill blood gas and block his skeleton, or if he tried to reanimate something, I just Kaya's Guiled him. So that was great. Void Ren, I put in Void Ren because I saw like the Lord of the Void and some other really expensive reanimator targets, and I wasn't sure if they were gonna resolve. I wasn't sure if I was gonna be able to remove them, and so I put in Void Ren just in case they resolve and I needed to remove them off the board. That's what this was for, but that never came up, and so that didn't matter too much. I guess I had Dam too, so I I guess I didn't really need the Void Rens. But yeah, that was just something I put in at that time because I wasn't too sure what I was kind of going against, but didn't matter. I got my Teferis out. I got my big Teferis, and I even had the Emperor out, just making tokens and stuff like that. And so, game two wasn't too bad for me. I 2-0'd him, and yeah. So, the final game was gonna be against Yawgmoth. We decided to just split and call it a day because it was getting kind of late. So we split the winnings. He was undefeated, and I was two wins, one draw, and so I just decided to give him the win, and we would just split the prize pool. But I did play against him a couple weeks ago, and I did beat him. He was playing Yawgmoth that time. I think he's still playing Yawgmoth now, and I did beat him the first time, so I think he was okay with just splitting. Granted, like just because I beat him the first time doesn't mean I'm gonna be able to beat him the second time. But yeah, so if we did play, I would have probably put in Aether Gust, Void Rens, and maybe Subtleties for sure, and probably a March and a Dam. So reasoning is Subtlety to kind of, if I can, get rid of Yawgmoth or get rid of Grist. Granted, if they call Court of Calling or they Eldritch Evolution, Subtlety's not going to really do too much, but it was there for that. Void Rens to kill the Grist for sure, to kill off Yawgmoth if you needed to. Aethergust basically get rid of all their cards except for Yawgmoth. This counters like basically access removal for Grist, access removal for uh, you know um, the roots and the young wolf and stuff like that. So if you needed to, you can use this. This for sure. So they don't combo off and get value off of their undying creatures. And yeah, that was it. I debated Dovin's Veto, but I realized that Grist on the stack is a creature, so Dovin Vetoes wouldn't really be able to counter this. And they're mostly a creature-based deck, so Veto most likely you're going to be countering like maybe a Veil of Summers, or maybe you're going to be countering a Cult of Calling, or maybe a Eldritch Evolution. So I didn't think it was going to be too worth it, so I never didn't cite that in. Kaya's Guile is not too bad. But Kaya's Guile, because they go so wide and they go with so many tokens, Kaya's Guile doesn't get as much value when playing against them. So I don't think I would side in Kaya's Guiles against them, unless you can always keep their boards clear. And if they try to Yawgmoth on an empty board, then Kaya's Guile is definitely great. But other than that, yeah, I think this sideboard would have been good enough to play against them. But yeah. So those were my matchups. I didn't get first in any of my tournaments, but I did place pretty high. I placed like usually fourth, second, or third. So I've been placing pretty high on the I guess the winnings there. So I've been getting a lot of store credit for placing like usually top 4, or top 3, or top 5 or whatever. So yeah, so those were my experience with the decks and some decks I play against. The deck's been working pretty well. This is like my first, or today was my first playthrough with this version of the deck with this alliteration, and so yeah, it's working out pretty well, and I've liked it. And Um, I didn't feel like there was any matchup I couldn't win. The hardest matchup for me usually was against other, um, well, I guess against 80 card Yorion decks. Like I just, they have such better like grind game than you do, that it gets kind of hard. So if they're playing 80 card Yorion, it's just the deck, it becomes a little harder to play against them. Granted, you're more consistent, but they definitely have more power plays in the long. The longer the game drags on, the harder it is to kind of close that gap, or pass that gap where you're just up in card advantage and you're always able to maintain the control of the board. So yeah, against 80 card Yurion decks, that's the deck that I find that's most difficult to play against. But outside of that, most of my matchups have been pretty good. Only time I really struggle to win is if I'm getting land stuck. So like I mentioned, getting land stuck really gets shitted on, because like if you're stuck on 2 to 3 lands, you're countering one thing, while they're playing like 2 things. Because most decks can cast 2 spells. Our deck, with control decks, we're usually only casting 1 spell, and that's usually like a counter spell or maybe a board wipe. So we're usually playing only 1 spell a turn. Our opponents are playing multiple spells, so we really need the mana for sure. If you don't get the mana up, you're gonna lose. And so, but yeah, from my experience, that's why I play the ops and snapcasters, to try to get that land, but also try to avoid flooding out, because the deck doesn't really have any ways to really draw into more stuff other than like Teferi and your Archmage's Charm. If you don't see those, then the deck it's really slow, and it's hard to try to gain advantage overall. Um, you know, you're not playing expressive alliteration. Like expressive alliteration fixes a lot of issues with like you know not getting your land count or not seeing your lands, and just overall raw card advantage for 2 mana. For us to get raw card advantage, we're usually spending 3 manas to draw 1 card, or maybe 3 manas to draw 2 cards. So yeah, we're spending a lot more mana for that, for sure. If we resolve our planeswalker, our planeswalkers are the main ways to gain advantage over time. You could play something like Toxic Deluge, or sorry, Memory Deluge. The only thing I found about Memory Deluge is I just didn't like it, because at 4 mana, I'd rather be doing something else. Because most of the time with 4 mana, I'm either trying to leave up counter spells to counter stuff, and kind of puts your mana at an awkward situation, or you're trying to you're oftentimes trying to uh, you know dam or something like that. So Memory Deluge for me didn't work as well as I like. But if you're playing like just a blue-white control deck, where you're more limited on your card choices, then Memory Deluge is great. But for me, I just felt like Memory Deluge wasn't as good as I would want it to be in this 3-color deck. So that's why I opt not to play Memory Deluge, and just play straight like ops and Snapcaster and stuff like that to try to dig through the deck. Yeah. Other than that, not much else to say. I've really liked the Emperor for sure. I think the Emperor has definitely gave the control deck a bit of ways to like um, be able to put board presence on the board, and a lot of decks have difficult times removing the Emperor. They need to attack into the Emperor to really remove her. And so as long as you can make tokens and you can defend the Emperor, she can just keep generating like advantage overall, and she's decent at removal. Like 4 mana to remove something is not terrible. She's not too great against Titan. Obviously, they attack and they like trigger their stuff. Um, you know, she's not gonna be super great. Like I wish, obviously, to balance her out. They make sure that the creature attacked first. Obviously, if she just was able to exile any creature that you wanted, then I think that'd be a little too good for sure. But yeah, um, that's it. That's all I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this bit of this deck update. I know this was going on for a little while and kind of rambled on. I may not be playing for the next couple of weeks because I'm a little bit busy. So this will probably be my last update for at least a week or two. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy, and we'll see you guys next time.